everyone, before we get into today's video, I just want to remind you guys to check out the Sad Milk collaboration channel. It is a fun channel between some of my YouTuber friends and I, including myself, obviously, Oz Media, One Topic at a Time, The Click, Salty Reddits, Wonderstruck Guy, and Flinders. Link is in the description box, make sure to check it out down below. We are uploading videos every single week. Hello everybody, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Blair, or the Illuminati, and today we are diving right back into Amway. If you haven't seen part 1, I highly recommend you check it out first, because otherwise you might not be quite sure what we're talking about. In the meantime, the rest of you can get ready because we've got a lot of ground to cover. Around 20 legal controversies are left in this company, and we've barely scratched the surface. We're starting off with Amway in China and the devastating effect their company has had overseas. MLMs were brought into China in 1995. Their factory opened in Guangzhou, and Amway began using their same sales tactics that thrived in America. For example, the demonstrations that show their laundry detergent removing dirt off of a white towel with only one drop. Personally, I don't think it's all that impressive because yeah, if you're cleaning one single product, you're not gonna need a full load's worth of laundry detergent. That's a fresh smudge on that towel, water will probably be doing most of the work anyway. Although their demonstrations were well known in the US, they were new to the Chinese people, but Chinese officials, on the other hand, were not impressed. Their system came into question in 1998 when Chinese officials cracked down on pyramid schemes and tarred direct sales companies with the same brush. Though companies like Amway say their model is vastly different, their revenue comes from the sale of real products among other differences, officials saw no distinction. The State Council, China's cabinet, banned all forms of such sales in a harshly worded notice that accused some companies of promoting evil cults, secret societies, and superstitious and lawless activities. In the months following that ban, the company bled $120,000 a day. Sales for all of 1998 were $36 million, 1/5 of the previous year's. Then, Amway went into proactive communications mode, initiating meetings with central government officials to discuss its plight. Efforts soon paid off. After negotiations with Amway and other companies, the government issued a directive allowing foreign-invested direct sales companies to continue selling door-to-door through an independent sales force. In return, companies had to open shops and sign labor contracts with all their salespeople, whose income would be based solely on their own sales rather than those of people they recruited. Is Amway still in China to this day? Yes, this is something, at least. It proves that the Chinese government is skeptical of them, and they've tackled a major part of the problem: the recruitment practices. Young Chinese men and women didn't have to deal with those "hey hun" messages so frequently, so long as recruiting other members doesn't earn salespeople a dime. In an effort to become more legitimate, Amway invested $29 million in 100 stand-up stores. And perhaps they could have been if those stores were selling products to the average consumer. Amway said that 2/3 of those stores were for their own salespeople. You were so close, Amway. You could have had a semi-normal business, opening shops, selling your overpriced laundry detergent, and having your distributors as just distributors. But what can I say? They're an MLM. Doing things by the book? It's not in the rules for them. Unfortunately, their wait paid off. In 2006, Amway's direct selling model was reapproved. 8 years after the ban, China allowed Amway to sell once more. As J. Van Andel said, "A more pressing concern are material and transportation costs that require close scrutiny by the company when it builds manufacturing facilities. Those are actually more important than labor costs, so we think that China will still be a great place for manufacturing." So many products are made in China, so this is a win-win for Amway. They can produce and sell there. Funny too how he says those are more important than labor costs. Yeah, well, when your sellers don't make a living wage, of course your main expense can be manufacturing. Isn't it just like kind of funny too for this company to be called like Amway? Because it's short for American Way, if you don't remember from the previous video. So it's like, what message are we really sending, honestly? Ultimately though, China did come to regret this decision to allow Amway to sell again. The MLM industry simply isn't welcome there. There's restrictions on direct selling, and several companies have faced some hefty fines in China, unlike the slap on the wrist $100,000 fine we saw earlier from the FTC in the United States. In 2018, the New York Times wrote, "Two companies, Herbalife and Usana Health Services, disclosed last year that they faced investigations in the United States for their operations in China under the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which prohibits American companies from bribing foreign officials. Another, Nu Skin, settled a similar case with the Securities and Exchange Commission in 2016, while Avon Products pleaded guilty in 2014, resulting in a $135 million fine. Amway, which is not public, has not disclosed any inquiries by American regulators. In one Chinese province, however, the conduct of some Amway sales distributors prompted an investigation, one that the victims say was squelched by local officials, including at least one with ties to the company. It does surprise me how other countries seem to take this more seriously than the US. Whether it's because of the case we talked about in 1979 or a different reason entirely, I'm not sure. But we know, just from income disclosure statements, what a ripoff these companies are. The conduct of Amway sales distributors prompted an investigation. That's the wording used. But Hunbots have been shady and despicable in the US for years, and nothing happens? I wish these scams were taken more seriously. They do damage lives, they make false claims. In Amway's Beijing center, a reporter with the New York Times listened as Big Brother Feng detailed sales tactics that would violate Chinese law if used, promising new recruits could earn more as they recruited others. A few days later, one of the recruits was out on the streets repeating the pitch as he handed out flyers of the XS energy drink. The flyers said new distributors could ultimately earn the equivalent of $75,000 a year. In fact, 96% of direct sellers make less than $750 a year, roughly the average monthly wage for private sector workers according to government statistics. In some regions, Amway in particular has come under focus. In Lanzhou, a city of nearly 3.7 million along the Yellow River and the ancient Silk Road in the Gansu province, dozens of former distributors have accused the company of abetting extortionate practices that have left them in debt. They accuse those above them of conning them into buying products that they could not realistically sell. One of them, Liu Gang, said she was persuaded to give up a job as a teacher in 2009 to pursue an Amway fortune. And sorry for butchering names here, it's kind of obvious that I'm not Chinese and I am most certainly struggling to pronounce these names and cities and regions. But this lying about numbers, deceptive sales techniques, and convincing someone to give up their teaching career, it's terrible. I'm sure I'm not alone when I say I wish the restrictions about direct sellers hadn't been lifted. There seems to be some sort of control over companies like Amway when they were in place, but now China looks like it's facing a lot of the same problems the US had in terms of MLMs. Liu Xianhong, a former distributor, said, "To climb to the top, you need a team of distributors under you. It forms a pyramid. We were at the very bottom." Yeah. That sounds a lot like MLMs, and we know it and hate it here too. Speaking of the US though, let's go back to what they were doing in America in the 90s and the early 2000s. And don't worry, they've got plenty of other international crimes to discuss later. One notable event during the 90s was when Amway actually changed their name to Quickstar. They wanted a techie sounding name, but more than that, it was a way to distance themselves from their past. They're pretty much known as Amway, or Scamway, but just know that Quickstar and Amway are pretty much synonymous for the remainder of the video, and boy oh boy was the Amway Quickstar situation active during these times. In 1999, Amway settled out of court for $9 million in a copyright infringement case. They were using the Beatles and Michael Jackson songs without permission during sales pitches. How do you run a business without knowing about copyright? It's a frustrating moment, but the fact that I'm barely touching on this speaks volumes about everything else that's happening as we go forward, and bear with me because there's a lot of dirt here. One website has kept track of every single tiny offense Amway committed. A lot of these aren't small offenses by any means, but this is the kind of stuff you might not find on Wikipedia at a first glance. It's pretty intense and very well sourced. I'll go over a few highlights from this website that I think you guys might find interesting. The top link is a book written about how Amway ruined one man's life. It sounds heartbreaking, and I really do feel for the people that get out with these scams with heaps of debt to their name and dreams absolutely crushed. Another shows a subpoena where Quickstar sued 21 anonymous bloggers and YouTubers. So they can use their freedom of speech to tell people that their company is going to make them rich, but the public can't use theirs to disprove of that. To warn others? Yeah, I don't think so. Oh, and if that's the case, come at me, Amway, because I have the same fucking rights as you. The website also references a Dateline appearance. I'll be getting into 2004 in just a minute. That year is it's gonna take a second. Moving forward with the list, one professor of law at Notre Dame spoke out against Amway. He said that the Amway business is run in a manner that is parallel to that of major organized crime groups, in particular the mafia. He wrote a detailed report explaining about their family structure, corporate structure, and dispute resolution all have serious similarities with organized crime. Do I have to explain why that's wrong? Why, when a professor of law at Notre Dame compares you to the mafia, perhaps you're not doing something quite right. No? We didn't realize that? Okay, carry on. Well, what about cults? Stephen Hassan, a mental health counselor specializing in destructive cults, compared Amway to, well, a destructive cult. He said, any group that engages in outright deception to pursue its ends, whether religious or secular in its apparent orientation, I define as a destructive cult. So we've got multiple professionals comparing Amway to the mafia and a cult. Fantastic. But apparently, typical anti-MLMers weren't the only ones noticing though. Remember how we said we were coming back to 2004? That year, Dateline NBC themselves, the home of Chris Hansen, went after Amway. The documentary's on YouTube if you're interested, and it's gonna be in my sources, just check my Pastebin link. And oh boy, it's something. Dateline investigated Amway Quickstar, as it's sometimes referred to, for a year. This wasn't a quick expose, but a seriously investigated and researched documentary that goes deep into the lives of those that work for this MLM. The documentary says that, as for the Hunbots, if they recruit a ton of other people and do the same, selling Amway products, they'll get a percentage of the sale. And the more people they recruit, the richer and richer they get. Sounds too good to be true? We thought it did. Dateline said this sounded like Amway, who got in trouble for making false promises. Of course, we know Quickstar and Amway are under the same umbrella, essentially the same thing. So obviously they're going to sound the same. Sure, they changed the name, but really not much else. Not their sales tactics, and certainly not their shady behavior. The people giving the Dateline interviewer advice tell them to think positive, buy self-help books, and attend seminars. No real business advice as far as I or Dateline can see. The seminar is described as a carefully choreographed show that promises money, the crowd chants freedom, flush that stinking job, and more, and I'm reminded of televangelism, cults, even concerts, but not a business seminar. After this unsettling first half, the documentary goes on to talk about the truth behind Quickstar. They follow a few sellers, even those who have done better than average we see in most MLMs, to learn how things really turned out. One man was promised a six-figure salary, says in his best year he made 34 grand. That's certainly not the worst income I've ever seen with MLMs, but we're only getting started. One couple says they lost 35 grand trying to sell Quickstar over a 5-year period on books, tapes, and traveling to rallies. So why did they end up on the losing end despite trying their best? Chris Hansen asks, is it because it's based on a lie? A former seller, Bill Short, realized that he was part of a mass deception and that there is another business most recruits don't realize exist. Apparently, successful Quickstar sellers weren't making their money with Quickstar products at all. It's through selling their own tapes and motivational books. Not only are these distributors making money from an entirely different business, but they're making money off the people they're lying to. In fact, about 20 high-level distributors are part of a high-level club, one those hundreds of thousands of other distributors don't get to join. Yeah, no wonder they can't join. They're the customers to the 20. As a former seller said, it creates a dependency, a habit that keeps you bound to that business. And then Dateline addressed that Quickstar is Amway. Its new incarnation, they call it, toward the end of the video. Quickstar's managing director says that the former seller that spoke to Dateline had a misleading recollection of events. Talk about the pot calling the kettle black. Misleading? Sis, how? Dateline wasn't the only event of 2004, though. That same year, Dr. Phil pulled his Shape Up diet supplements off the market because of an FTC investigation. And where do those supplements come from? Alticor, the owner of Amway and Quickstar. Although charges from the FTC were eventually dropped, a class action suit was filed and $10.5 million were awarded to those who followed Dr. Phil's plan. Yeah, so hear me out. Crazy idea. Maybe don't peddle Nutrilite on national television. I don't know, doesn't look like a good look. But again, when they're going by Shape Up, Quickstar, and other names, it's easier to sell than Amway. Marketing a scammy company isn't hard if you're going under a different name, apparently. It sure as hell means you shouldn't be selling in the first place if you have to change your name to do it, but no bad reputation will deter these MLMs. The next large suit we saw was in 2010, when Amway had to pay, yet again, for being a pyramid scheme. Plenty of MLMs are accused of being pyramid schemes, but if there ever was one, it's Amway. Hunbots say all the time how we're not a pyramid scheme schemes are illegal. Yes, and illegal activities earn jail time and fines. Amway paid $56 million in fines in 2010, so I guess we're just waiting on a prison sentence to make it official. The suit alleged the company used unfair and illegal business practices that misled distributors about their ability to make money and how much it would cost to be part of the business. The case was filed in California in 2007 by former distributors of Quickstar, the name multi-level marketing giant Amway used for its US-based operation at that time. The settlement does not constitute an admission of guilt, but settlement language says the company stipulates that certain reforms in its business instituted after the filing of this action have been motivated by the case. The deal was announced via a brief press release and an email to Amway employees Wednesday morning. The suit contains strong and disagreeable allegations and language that we categorically reject, the letter from Chairman Steve Van Andel and President Doug DeVos said. They are sensationalist claims that remain unproven and that we expect to be dismissed by the court. Nevertheless, the company and its IBO leaders take responsibility for all past issues, and we take responsibility for fixing them. We regret that the experiences of some IBOs fell short of the high standards that have allowed us to help many people from all walks of life start successful businesses for over 50 years. I gotta say, I really like this company's reaction to things. It's kind of hilarious. We deny this. These claims are ridiculous, but we're going to take responsibility even though we definitely didn't do it. In part 1, this is the same reaction Amway had back in 1979, if you don't remember. If you didn't do something illegal, don't pay the fines. Fight that shit. Prove you didn't do it. It shouldn't be that hard to prove you're not a pyramid scheme. Just pull up those income disclosures and state how many people made money that you promised would make money. Oh, shit. Wait, you can't. That's because you're guilty. You can't categorically reject something, then agree to pay $56 million in fines and plead guilty. It's contradictory and it's stupid, all right? I've just run out of words for how stupid this business is. There are so many more scandals, but I'm going to have to summarize here. If I dug into every single one of these, we'd be here for actual years. But I will mention them because it's worth knowing the sheer mass of controversies and lawsuits this company has faced. In 2006, the state police in India raided and seized Amway's products and petitioned against them because they violated the Prize Chits and Money Circulation Schemes Banning Act. The corporate offices were shut down and Amway media advertisements were banned in 2008 by the state government. More products were seized in 2012 in India, valued around $400,000 at the time. The next year, the managing director and CEO of Amway India Enterprises, William Pickney, and 2 other directors were arrested. They were granted bail and the business was unaffected. Pickney was arrested again in 2014, but eventually charges against the Amway directors in India were dropped. So now let's switch countries, because when you're a company as shady and international as Amway, you're bound to get a bad reputation in multiple places. Yet another class action lawsuit was filed against Amway in Canada in 2009, though this ultimately failed. Amway had another court case between 2007 and 2008 in the UK, and although the judge said Amway allowed misrepresentations of their business, they were ultimately allowed to stay. Way back in 1997, Amway tried to sue Polish filmmakers for speaking badly about Amway in their film Welcome to Life. They were later acquitted for spreading false information. The film had been the subject of controversy for years in Poland since it was banned while the suit took place, and Amway said it ridiculed the private sellers that were part of their company. In 2017, Vietnam determined Amway was violating multiple regulations for their operations. Whew, that's just the small stuff. Those are all the extras. That's not like the big serious accusations. With all of that said, why would anyone want to work for Amway? Their products are overpriced, they're clearly a pyramid scheme, and it's impossible to make money with them. There just really isn't a reason. With Beachbody, Hunbots feel like coaches and get a sense of self-worth from teaching people how to be fit, I'm sure. With Unique, it's about pretending to be a makeup artist and feeling like a makeup guru. Who wants to sell $15 dish soap to their friends for pennies, though? Even though we all know what's coming, let's affirm that you cannot make money with Amway. In the UK, certified retail distributors earned about £500 per year when the average income is $26,500. Only £500. That's just over $600. Amway's own disclosure statements don't look much better either, not to mention the countless stories of failure that come from former Amway sellers. Harry Marshall described his time as an Amway seller as such. In the recruiting aspect, I was spending more money than I made. Little by little, though, there was a ball and chain that my failure was dragging behind me. Every month that I hadn't hit my goals was more evidence that I couldn't do this. I was embarrassed at how little progress I'd made. After 4 years, I still hadn't made much money. I listened to more motivational tapes and shoved my uncomfortable feelings down, but meanwhile my intuition told me nobody would inflict this on anyone. You're killing yourself, and you'd never want anybody you're recruiting to know how much of a struggle this is. In 1992, one former seller added up their own numbers. When they were calculating profit alone, their total was $5,100 per year. Then, taking away travel expenses, books, etc., the new total came to negative $480. And there's countless of other stories over the years. So it's plain and simple. You won't earn money from it. Not unless you're in the 1%. Not unless you're writing self-help books to help the masses of failing distributors at these poor, pitiful rallies. So in the end, I'm left without words. Amway is responsible for so much damage. Since 1979, it's been a poorly kept secret that they're a pyramid scheme. There's too many cases to count, too many people hurt by them to count, and I can't think of a single reason why someone would want to associate with them. To recap, they've been banned in other countries. They've attacked and sued anyone that calls them out on their behavior, so I'm not going to be too shocked if I'm potentially next on that chopping block. Experts have compared them with the mafia and destructive cults. Their products are overpriced. They consist of MLMs within their MLM. Their founders have been delusional and denied any wrongdoing over the years. There's not one redeeming quality in this company. It's known as the grandfather of MLMs simply because every MLM I've seen seems to be modeled after their behavior. It's disgusting, and I hope the FTC redeems themselves and takes Amway down one day. So please do not support this company. Do not support any MLMs. Be aware of how they use multiple names, how they try to trick you. And with that being said, that's where I'm going to end today's video. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let me know if you like this video, not like this video. Tell me what interesting facts you know about Amway or your family's involvement in Amway. If you like this video, hit that like button. If you're new here, subscribe and consider sharing the video. And if you just need a break from it all, but you still want some more content from me, in my description box, you're going to find links to the Sad Milk collaboration channel where you can see me goofing around with some of my YouTube buds, or you can look at my puppy Casper's channel too for some really cute, wholesome doggo moments. So with that being said, guys, that's where I'm ending the video. I love you guys. Thank you for making it to another video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!